Welcome. Power BI just released their October update and it's packed full of updates. In this video, we're going to cover 9 key updates, including 6 hands-on labs. At the end of this video, you will have a full understanding of everything that was released in the October update, including the knowledge for how to use these tools. So let's talk about what's going to be covered. Here are the 9 updates. We're going to talk about the enhanced Power BI creation utilizing Copilot. Then we're going to go to the quick measure suggestions. There's a small tweak in there, but I'm going to show you what those are. Quick recap. Visual calculation update. There's some new visuals, including the combo chart and a field parameter that you can utilize this with. Then there's an Azure map update pertaining to the reference layer I'm going to talk through. Markup enhancements. So the markup values within line charts are now updated to include more formatting and functionality. We're going to show you those. There's a big new list slicer, which I'm going to go through in detail, show you how to utilize this, unlock what it is. There's also a Info.View new feature that will allow us to create a dictionary essentially for our model. I'm going to show you how to do this as well. It's extremely cool. There's a new way that there's an opportunity to utilize the value filter settings. I'm going to give a talk through of what that is. And then finally, PBIR has been enhanced to include additional features and updates. I'm going to talk through those. So let's dive into this update. If you want to keep up to date with Power BI updates, hit subscribe, like, leave a comment. I read them all. I'll respond to everything. Let's dive into Power BI Desktop. Let's go. All right, so here we are in Power BI Desktop. Now, as always, we're going to talk through these 9 updates I've highlighted directly from the blog. But what you can do is in the link in this video description is download this file. It will allow you to follow along. You'll have examples for every feature and how to utilize them. You can see in the bottom, we're going to talk through these. There's going to be labs and tabs that we're going to go through. But specifically, what I already outlined, we're going to cover these 9 bullet points, including 6 labs. There also will be sporadic links you can click, like this will go right to the blog. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Again, if there's a specific update you're interested in, check out the chapters because this will be organized so you can skip to the points that are most relevant to you. So let's go ahead and begin. The first update is Copilot AI creation. What you'll see from this is that I'm going to pull out every single update from the blog, highlight it, talk about it, go to the next. So firstly, the Copilot and AI enhanced Power BI report creation. Essentially what this is it's an increased algorithm, it seems like, to create better report pages. For Copilot and AI, I'll do a demo of that in the lab as well. But you can get into details. I have a video out there. You can put a link here that will go through, a half hour of how to utilize this stuff. But let's take an example. So what does this mean? Copilot and AI enhance Power BI report creation. So in a lab, here's an example of what was created. But when we talk about enhanced features for Copilot, if you come on the right-hand side, if you have this set up, again, look at the other video. There's administrative settings you have to do to configure this to work. But if I go to Copilot, click this Copilot icon. And so now here is what is included with this update. It's essentially when we want to suggest content for a new report page, it's going to give us some additional prompts. And again, if we go to this lab, we will suggest content for a new report page. Let's click this and see what this looks like. It's going to work on it. It's going to prompt us with some additional questions. So now here's a suggested outline, a product analysis, sales performance, customer demographics. Again, we can click whatever and kind of click create. It will start to make a page for us with additional prompting as well. See, I can do that to analyze. I recommend these fields. Let me know if you want to proceed. It's behind this. And so I'll just say, please proceed. If I wanted to again, change this direction, I can suggest it to use different measures, different things. And there you go. So now it just created a product performance report. And that's the summary of this update. So again, the other video I have is going to go into great detail around how to utilize this feature and dive more into it. But I want to show you that. So that's the Copilot creation as well as a lab. So now let's move on to quick measures. I'm going to close this screen over here. Okay, so quick measures. Again, this is a quick update, but there is going to be a lab here as well. I think just a good remembrance of what the quick measures is, and we'll do an example of it. So what this is kind of a degradation actually of, there was a feature here, suggestions with Copilot, that is no longer available in the quick measure menu. And instead it's moved to utilizing that Copilot tab that I discussed there. But just as a quick level reminder for a lab, what in the world are quick measures? They're very helpful. You want to make sure you just know them. So again, this data model is going to have dates and sales. It's not as important to understand the model, but I will talk through what we're going to do here. So we're just going to do a quick measure. This is so you can know what that looks like. So I'm going to pick date. Let's just say net sales per date. We're going to make this table right here. And I'm going to go to calculations, sales, net sales. And here we go, net sales. But now a quick measure, and again, you can tweak these. What's cool about quick measures is that it will actually create the DAX for you versus like a visual calculation where it's more of a generic kind of coding. So if I go quick new measure, oops, I clicked new measure. I actually wanted to do new quick measure. So if I come back to modeling or home, and go to new quick measure, it's going to pop this dialog box up. And this is where it said it's updated now, where you can get suggestions by utilizing this feature. But essentially, this is where all of the values are now for, say, totals, rolling averages, running total. So instead of having to type up the DAX and knowing what that is, I can just select like running total based upon the value of net sales and the value of date. Direction ascending, add this, and it will literally create the calculation for you. So now I have net sales. It's going to take net sales, filter all selected, it writes it so you can then tweak it as needed. It adds it to your model, net sales. If I add it to this table, now you can see it blew it up. If I wanted to evolve the calculation to only show days where there were sales or things, you can do that. But what this is saying is there was a sale for $24,000 that continued. And then down here on the 13th, it added and it kept growing. So these are quick measures. It's really great. It's a good way to do that. And they've been enhanced or essentially degraded to not allow that part, but it's important to know what they are. Let's keep going. On to visual calculations. So this is cool. And we're going to have a lab as well. They keep adding. Let's get rid of this to make things a little bit bigger. So there's 2 videos you should check out. Firstly, I have a video about visual calculations, which is here, and it's going to be a half-hour detailing how to use visual calculations. There's a second video for field parameters that's going to be here, and it's going to detail everything you need to know about field parameters. But essentially, what has happened is that visual calculations are now available on the combo line chart, which they previously weren't. So what that looks like, let's do a lab again. So we're going to make a very basic table, and we're going to use the combo line chart to create a total sum. What this is doing is it's saying, here's the net sales, and then there's a line that keeps adding it up over time, growing it as we need to. So here's how the visual calculation is now for the combo line chart. I'll come up to this part. I'll create a new line chart, and we're just going to start by simplistically saying, let's have the date hierarchy, and we're going to have the sales, the net sales. Cool. And now let's drill down into this. So we have our values here, but we want to have a rolling total on the right-hand side, a running sum. So how do we do that? Well, we do it this way. So what we can do now is change this to the chart we already have, but if we go to new visual calculation, we're going to add, this is a new enhancement too. Previously you had to go into the dialog, but now you can just click it and it will show a drop-down listing. We're going to add a running sum, and you'll see it just prompts it already for us. And all we need to do is say, what do we want the running sum to be? And again, this is where you can go to that video that I provided, because it will give you a breakdown to all these calculations and what to do with it. But now like that, it created it. So why is it not quite working yet? Well, let's take a look. We need to move this to the y-axis. And there you go. And then if you want to, you can go back to the report And we have this showing totals over time. You can also switch this to be on another axis if you want. So you can have that growth rate tracking over here. But the big update is that it's available now on combo line charts as well as field parameters. So if you have a chart that uses field parameters, and again, come back to this video and you will see all about those. It's a whole half-hour video of how to do it, and you'll be good to go. So that's a cool update. Now let's talk about the Azure map. This one would be a longer demo, so I'm going to talk through it. But essentially, if you are utilizing Azure maps and you use reference layers, they're not as common, though some people do use them. But those who do will appreciate this update. Essentially, the reference layer is something you can put on the background of a map to allow more context, more custom mappings, and it utilizes a JSON file which takes values and you assign them to specific polygons or shapes. But what this can do now is the data-bound reference layers. Essentially, you could utilize these by now filtering and dynamically sorting the data as well, instead of just having only a visual layer. So we'll bound data within it. And again, here's a summary of that. It's a feature you can dive into if you use reference layers. They're just not as common, but that's what's going on there. Next, markers. So they keep enhancing markers, which is very cool because it allows us to make more customized charts. Specifically, this revamp is for line and scatter charts, where now we have categories, series, shape, color, transparency, borders. I'm going to talk through all of these in a lab as well. As you can see here, we have a chart, and then boom, it has this big old circle here for a marker. We have different markers per different line. So let's show how these things are. We'll go through and demo each of these as well with the categories, the series, the shape, the color, and you'll understand how to use it after this quick lab. So let's make a new chart. Again, there's two different ways you can do it. So this one is a line with a continuous axis. This one is a categorical axis. So let's start with this one. So if we just go line chart, we'll keep using our net sales. So I'm going to pick net sales, and then I'm going to move it over date. We have this chart. Okay, so let's go specifically to the markers that we're discussing. So now, if we expand the markers section, well, one of the first updates is that if you want to pick, it kind of be more applicable. If you want to highlight certain things, you can just turn on labels per category. So I'm going to turn it on. As you can see, there's now a dot here. And again, there's different ways you can set this up. But now for the functionality of increasing this, we can add different shapes. So in this case, I'll do a diamond. Let's make it real big. And just for the sake of the demo, if you want to rotate it, again, you can rotate it even more, different degrees and different ways. But now the color, set the colors you like, add the border. I kind of like to match the color series that kind of wraps it up. And then you can make it the thickness you desire. And so that's the setting. That's the update for the markers for this chart. But then as well is if you have a categorical something with a line, or I'm sorry, with a legend, you can set it for the whole legend. How this, I picked one date, but now if we say, let's do a line chart again, we're going to do the same situation. I'm going to put net sales. I'm going to put the date hierarchy this time. Let's drill up to this, but let's separate it by customer, and we'll do the gender. So now we have two lines going right here. And what we can do is this is counting the gender, so we don't want that. We want to go legend like that. So now, the male, female, but if we wanted to set the markers for each category, that's what this next portion of the update is talking about for categories. And what that looks like is if you come into any chart, now it's going to be slightly different, where the series, instead of it being applied to like January, February, March, April, or the x-axis, now it's going to be set up to be for the legend. So I'll say maybe female, show this, and we'll make it a square, color, whatever color you choose, the same functionality. Turn on the border, make the border a little bit bigger, make the icon a little bit bigger, and we'll match the color series. And so you can start to design this as well. And this allows enhance functionality when it comes to how you're designing your line charts. It's going to be valuable when you want to get in there and really tweak out how something looks. Now we can do that. So again, there's the continuous idea of the x-axis, and then there's the categorical idea of the legend, where you can do the whole entire thing. Those are the main updates that are released in this markers enhancement. Let's keep on moving. So there's a new list slicer. This is going to be cool. What's interesting to highlight though is that it's going to keep evolving. It's not done yet. For this one, we have to go to your options and settings and turn it on through the preview features through these steps. But it notes this is in the early development stage and we don't recommend using it in production. And what you'll see is there's just some wonkiness. There's a little bit sometimes of formatting issues or how things appear, and that's going to evolve over time. I also hope that over time with any hierarchy slicer, something that's really valuable is to exclude blanks. It's kind of a good thing to do for filter hierarchies and things like that. But I will show you how to use this. So we're going to have a lab here now too. So on the top is just net sales trending, that classic thing. Let's see the differences and we're going to build something. So on the left is the new slicer. I can come through if I collapse these groups. We have select all, office, power platform. Maybe I choose power platform. I pick this. Cool. It's kind of highlighting and looking awesome with how I'm picking things. I can go through and select what I want. And it's a pretty cool feature. You can control all this stuff. If I hover over it, it does one thing. If I click it, it does another thing. It's pretty awesome. And I will do a deeper dive into this to get really customizing with it. But I will show you now how to do this generally because it's important to understand. Again, the differences of the left, if I come here and clear all these real quick, there's that functionality. On the right is the old slicer. All this has is a box. It doesn't have the same kind of coolness for how things look, though functionally it does the same thing. It is way more enhancing and kind of beautiful to use this. So let's build one together. All right. What's also neat about it is that you can create your hierarchy, and it kind of calls that out here, or in the blog post. You can build your own hierarchy with this one, as opposed to having to create a hierarchy in your data model for that's using the old list slicer. So let's build one. I've enabled the feature. I'll click list slicer, and let's go to product. I'm going to say I want the category. So there's 3, and then I'm going to want the product. All right, so it's in there now, but it doesn't quite look the same, right? So let's show you how to do the different formatting of this. Let's go through it. We'll talk through each of these categories. It's what's called out as well in the blog post. So first I'm going to come here. The title, it just says category. We'll leave it as that. I called it list slicer new there, but let's go into slicer settings. Single select, turn this off. I want to be able to pick multiple items as we feel like it. So I'm going to turn that off. And if we go back to single, I'm going to show select all. The shape. Okay, so now the shape correlates. Let's uncheck all these things. The shape is going to correlate right here on the right-hand side to the box. So if you wanted a rounded rectangle, and you can change the degree to which the roundness happens, that can look kind of elegant. Again, the snipped, if you want to have kind of this tab looking thing that can look cool if you go horizontally across the page, kind of like it's a file system. But for this case, we'll go around a rectangle, and that's the shape. The layout, now this is an important thing to consider with how you're building this thing. If you default it to fixed number of buttons, is what that says, to off, whoop, that doesn't look right, because it's just going to try to jam everything into the screen. So if you want to have a fixed number, you can control what's seen, how you kind of scroll through it. So in this case, I'm going to fix the buttons just because it starts to kind of overlap. When you get down, I'm going to do 5. You can change these as you go through it. Next would be the space between the buttons. You know, this little space here, the indentation, how far it moves to the right. If you want to reverse indentation, you can. And then overflow. So the overflow it's continuous scroll. I just think that's more natural with any kind of development versus paginated, where you have to kind of click down arrow to go to these groups. Some people like that, but I'm all about the continuous scroll. And now it's going to be kind of like the other filter slicers. And I have a big demo on all the slicing functionality if you want to dive into it. But at a high level, now that we have the layout set, the callout values, all categories are going to have the ability to pick default, hover, press, selected, mixed. So what does this mean? So let's say, for example, hover. If I do hover, let's make it red and bold. So now you can see as you hover over something, it's making the word red. That's cool. Maybe we do, when it's selected, you can see it turns white. We'll just leave that in there. So it's kind of this hover idea. And that's for the callout value. But there's more functionality pertaining to the selection icon. And this is where say default, we'll do hover as well, just for experimental purposes. If I do hover, I want the icon to change to red too. So you can see the box turns to red instead of black. But what's kind of weird is if you want to get all crazy, you can move the position of it to say the right. Box flips to the right. Don't know why you'd want it. It's kind of natural to be on the left. But if for some reason you want to have the box on the right-hand side, you can totally do that. So you can set that up now with the layout section. The expand collapse icon, it's going to do the same thing, like over hover. What do you want to have happen with this little icon on the left here, which is the expand and collapse. So I just made it red as well. You can see that here. And if you want to change the layout, you can do that too, moving it to the right. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you certainly can. It gives you all the controls. Another cool thing is for every individual button. This is where, say we select something, you can control what the button looks like when it's selected. So in this case, I like to add these accent bars for ones that are selected, position it to the right, make the color kind of Power BI yellow, and make this sucker wide. Keep click, 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 click. And now it's just kind of cool. It adds this element of like, that's picked. So full control of the list slicer. I can do a deeper dive on it, but if you watch that, you have an understanding now of how this slicer is set up to work and how you can start utilizing it. So it is cool, but note, it does say to not use it in production, though I'm going to anyways. It's a cool slicer. All right, moving on to Info.View. This is some neat stuff. We're going to have a lab with this one too. There's a lot to unpack here, but let's talk about what this is doing. So I'm going to first collapse this. And what Info.View expressions do is it will return information in your model automatically, which is great when someone says, hey, I want to be able to see what the calculation's doing for any given table, for any given thing. We can now set that up and you can see all the calculations here, what's happening in this model, and you can create like a dictionary. It's extremely cool, but let's talk about through a lab what this really means with Info.View tables. Okay, so when we're here, let's start, and I've already done this through these tables here, but as an example, if we go to modeling, let's make a new table and let's get all the information about the measures. So all we can simply do is say this new table equals info.view.measures. Hit enter, and we'll call this z_delete me because it's already over here for measures. But so you can see, it's as easy as that. Hit enter. Now we have z_delete me. If we come to our table view, I go to z_delete me. Well, we can see what this has done is it's taken every single calculation in this entire model. And the table that it's included on, I have mine organized mostly in calculations. You can see some are living in customer. And then it shows the DAX query, what's written out. This will allow you to create a data model, a data dictionary for anybody who's referencing what you're doing. It also has the display folder, which is extremely helpful. You want to include this as well as you build things out because it can show how things are organized as someone's trying to get to the model. Those are kind of the key columns that are returned. But if we look at that same process, we have the Z-Info dictionary. I'll talk about that in a second. So you have columns, and this is where the exact same way We have all the columns that are in your model, left to right. So it will show here's the table, the date column, what it is, the customer, the folder, how it's organized, the whole deal, which is just perfect. So then if we have measures, it's going to show the same measures. Relationships, if you want to see how your model is constructed, one direction, both directions, if you want to have that information documented, it's going to show you that. And then general tables. But what's cool is how to create a dictionary. If you have your measures and you have your columns, you can create something like this, where Z-Info Dictionary, I just picked some universal columns together. I'm going to say summarize the view columns and union it with summarize view measures. And I just picked the ID, the table name, the column name. You could add the display folder, other things like that to really organize this thing up. And then you can create something like this, which is one single table that says, maybe you want to have a user say, here's customer attributes, here's data attributes. You can see every single item, product, and they can click it, filtered by table, because it's unioning these things together in this info dictionary. Check this out. It's a really cool update. Let's keep on moving. So now with the value filter behavior, this is another update. This one I'm not going to dive into too deep. You can click the link to read more about it. It has a really long example, but essentially it's an opportunity for us to change by the default nature of the filter value from coalesced into independent. And this is a summary of what that does. There's a big example for it as well. It's kind of like if you're creating multiple measures and you have something that's all years and you don't want one filter to always impact the other filter, which is the default behavior, you can have these independent filters. So it will just work independently versus multiple filters coalescing all the values together. Again, there's another example through this. They're saying that it will be eventually independent by default, but it's currently coalesced. So again, this is going to be something that's going to come out over time. Read into this, check it out as you're interested. You can set up the setting as you see fit. Finally, something that was really cool is if you look at this video I've created as well, it's going to detail out how to do detailed source control that works for your whole entire ecosystem, source control best practices. There were some limitations with PBIR files, but now these three things are coming, and specifically in the coming weeks, PBIR reports will be supported within Power BI apps. So all this is saying is that now you can do these three things. You can publish PBIR from the desktop. You can download PBIX using PBIR format from a workspace, and you can upload the same. Previously, you had to use source control. You had to push it through like a Git or Azure DevOps kind of situation. But then in the coming weeks as well, to have this in Power Apps is going to be a full circle. It's going to be great. But again, if you want to know anything about source control, check out this video. And there you go. That is the key of all these updates right here. Boom. 9 key updates that are released. I skip over some of these things. You know, I don't want to pay $12 a year per user for a visual, so I'm not going to waste my time. But there's a lot of great updates that keep coming out. So again, if you want to stay up to date, subscribe, hit like, follow along, leave a comment or question. I will always respond. And enjoy Power BI. Talk to you later. Bye.